So Chronicle is a game by Saiji Kanai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this is the guy who did Love Letter and R. R was rethemed as Brave Rats and recently released in that format. I believe Love Letter is soon to be rethemed with a Munchkin theme, I heard today. But Chronicle is a trick-taking game, and it uses the same sort of original artwork that you saw on the original version of Love Letter before AEG got their hands on it, and on the original edition of R. So I'm talking about this sort of artwork for Love Letter. We had artwork like this, and for R we had very similar sort of style like this. Chronicle is a slightly more complicated, not very complicated, but a little more than Love Letter. Again, uses that beautiful sort of pen and ink Japanese style artwork here that's familiar from those other games. And that's the main thing that interested me about the game. That and the fact that I really like trick-taking games. And this is a familiar twist on trick-taking games with a good dose of chaos in it, because every card that I play is going to have an action that is either going to benefit me or harm other players. So it does fit into that Love Letter sort of world with those sort of abilities. I'll show you the cards and we'll talk a little bit about how the game plays, and then I'll let you know what I think of it. Chronicle features two different decks of cards, history cards and character cards, and a bunch of these tokens which are fame tokens. I don't know why they need this big fame thing written down here and the one on it in this fairly bland graphic design, because one is 1 point, so they could be anything. They could be cubes, they could be tokens. I suppose this little chap is quite a nice illustration on there, but essentially those fame tokens could be anything. They're just to mark who's gained points. The character cards are the nice cards that I was talking about, with the nice characters on here and their special abilities. And then we have the history cards, which are essentially the conditions for each round of the game which are going to score you points. So for example, with the Necromancer, the political intrigue card is the condition. The Necromancer is the person who gets to play first, the person who has the Necromancer in their hand. And then the player or players with the fewest wisdom allies earn 1 fame point at the end of the round. So we play in essentially a very familiar trick-taking game, and as we're taking the tricks, we're taking cards in front of us. Wisdom is one of the suits. So the green wisdom cards, let's see if I can find one of them. There we are. So this guy, it says wisdom down the side, so this is his suit, and he's a green card. So if we had this card in play, then at the end of the round, the player or players with the fewest green cards would earn 1 point. And we're playing until one player has 3 points. That's the winning condition. So we're playing several different rounds of the game. Each individual round of the game, each individual trick actually, is called a meeting. So this is where the different characters come together. So if you were playing a 4-player game, you would end up with 4 players, 4 characters would come together in a meeting, and then whoever wins it gets to take those characters and put them in front of them. So, to give you the very basics of how a trick-taking game works, in case you've never played one, the way that it works is one player, the cards would be distributed, the character cards would be distributed amongst all the different players. So each player would have a hand full of character cards. They would choose one card that they're going to play. So supposing I chose the red 6. So I play this. Now the player to my left has to follow suit. So they have to play a red card if they have one. If they don't have one, then they get to play another card and they play it face down. They can't win the trick unless they play a red card that beats my red card. However, they can also play, in this trick-taking game, they can also play wild cards if they choose to, and add that to the round. Now, the twist in this game is that every card has an action on it. So this wild card automatically makes you win that trick. So this player would play this, he would win the 3 cards automatically, regardless of the fact that he hasn't played a red card to follow suit. The other sort of actions that they have, this meeting ends immediately after this card is played. The round ends when one player has run out of cards. Choose one card already played during the meeting, so one card already played during this trick. That player who played that card returns it to their hand. So we're doing all sorts of chaotic things, damaging other people's chances of winning the game, increasing our own chances, and trying to fulfill the conditions in these history cards. Sometimes there'll be 2 or 3 of these in play, depending on which other cards come up or which variant of the game that you're playing. It's a fairly short game, it's probably over in half an hour or so. The more familiar you get with the cards, the quicker the game plays. In the first time you play it, you're going to be reading through the cards, trying to think about what you're going to do, and so it can run fairly slow. But things pick up as you become familiar with these cards. It's a good example of a trick-taking game, a fairly chaotic example of a trick-taking game. But I'll tell you a little bit about what I think of it, and maybe suggest some other games that you might like if this sort of game is up your street. People who have seen a lot of my reviews will probably know that I'm quite a big Friedemann Friese fan. So Friedemann Friese designed this set of games here, Power Grid and Furstenfeld and Copycat and Black Friday, all these fantastic games. But one small subsection of his games that I particularly enjoy is his trick-taking games. Fünf Gurken is a recent release of his. Now in this game you're trying to lose the final trick of every round, so it has a little twist on other trick-taking games. It's based on a traditional game called 5 Cucumbers apparently, and one nice thing about it is that it has these lovely little wooden cucumber pieces, which are just fantastic little pieces, nicer than your fame points that you get in Chronicle. It's a simple game, very accessible, a really good starting point for anybody who wants to get into playing a few trick-taking games. At the other end of the spectrum, Friedemann Friese also released Stickmeister, or Trickmaster would be the translation. This tries to be every trick-taking game that there's ever been, all sort of squeezed into one package. So whereas in Chronicle you have a deck of history cards which are all win conditions for the game, it's a very small deck. In Stickmeister you've got a big deck of different win conditions, and you always play with 3, so they interact in different ways. They might contradict each other a little bit, and the fun of the game is trying to work out what the hell is my strategy in this particular version of the game, and that's a lot of fun. There's another similar game, I believe, I haven't played it, called The Dwarf King, which does the same sort of thing, changing win conditions throughout the game as you're trick-taking. If you really want to get into trick-taking games, you could go a bit deeper and look at things like Tichu or Haggis, the indie boards and cards sort of alternative version, which is similar to Tichu. Those sort of games have a little bit more strategy to them than your classic simple trick-taking games. Chronicle is a fairly chaotic example of the genre, but it fits very comfortably with the rest of Kanai's sort of canon, with Love Letter and R and those sort of games. So if you like those games and you like trick-taking, you're going to love this. So that's Chronicle. It's a beautiful game, a little chaotic. The strategy maybe is, there's a degree of it, but it's a fun experience, a quick experience, and a cheap package to purchase all round. So good little package, and I do recommend Chronicle.